When you have a problem, the best process is to divide it into problems you can handle. And the ones you can't, take your time, go find resources to learn about this aspect or this piece of the problem, and then tackle it bit by bit. Hey guys, so one of my friends said I should talk about how I got into software engineering from a pre-med path in college. And in this video, what I'm going to talk about is, should you switch to software engineering, how long it might take you, what languages you can probably learn that would give you an advantage in the market, as well as whether or not AI is going to take your job in the future. So stay tuned. One of the main reasons I switched was simply because it wasn't the most flexible path. For you guys who are probably doing nursing or other, you guys who are actually on the pre-med track, you know that it's a very rigid and memory-intensive class. Because initially I was a research assistant at a lab back in college. So pretty much what I did was I really hated the repetitive work. It was just doing the same thing over and over and over again. So what I ended up doing was I went and learned R. This was my first language, by the way. I learned R simply to design an automated process for what I was doing. This is where it kind of started for me, and things just went a whole different path. And I think for you guys who are probably on the fence, first you have to ask yourself if this is something that you would truly enjoy doing. And later in this video, I'm going to give you guys a way you can know if you'd be successful in software engineering. So this video is pretty much for those of you guys who are probably considering going into programming. Should you go into programming? It depends. What's your skill set? Because programming is pretty much a bunch of problem-solving issues. Like, it's pretty much problem-solving the entire way through. Are you a person who enjoys solving problems? If you want something that engages you, challenges you, you love solving problems and all that, you'd be perfect for software development, to be honest. If you want something a bit more chill, relaxed, laid back, programming would not be for you. So there are a lot of ways you can approach a problem. Of course, there's the best way to approach the problem, but you're free to take on multiple ways. And as you grow as a software dev, you'll figure out the best ways to take on specific types of problems. Most of you guys are probably aware that AI is growing massively. What I wanted to point out for those of you guys who want to go into software development but are worried that AI would probably cover what you were going to do. So in engineering, there are different paths you can go. First of all, you can be a software developer. Okay, so you're the actual person who programs the code. You can be a software architect. So you're the person who designs the framework in which the engineers build upon. You can be a project manager who gets all aspects of a project before it's built. There are different paths in software engineering if you want to get into the industry. Today, with the advent of AI, it's way more important to have soft skills than raw programming skills. These are things like, can you communicate properly? Can you take technical stuff and make it non-technical for everybody else? While AI can copy a lot of our hard skills, like, to be honest, AI can code better than most engineers I've interviewed. But there are certain reasons why if I see somebody and I'm like, okay, this guy has a way he thinks that AI can't replicate. Or he can talk well, he can communicate well. Those are skills that most of us are looking for now in engineering. So does that mean you shouldn't learn programming or not? No, you should learn programming if you're down set on this path. But the thing is, along with learning programming, also take the time to develop certain soft skills that can kind of give you an edge over other participants, other potential rivals, or even AI at that. So how long would it take for someone to learn programming? Assuming that you just have never done it before and you just hop into it. First thing you have to consider is your aptitude. Are you the type of person who would reasonably understand how programming works? If you can do algebra, or you liked algebra back in whether it's high school or college, whichever side you did it, you're probably going to be relatively decent at programming. So the length of time it would take somebody to learn programming is really based on their aptitude. Do you have a knack for programming? Do you enjoy programming? Would you want to do programming for an extended period of time? If you like algebra, you can probably do programming. And again, this is a very simplified version. Of course, A plus B equals C. If A plus B equals C makes sense to you, you can probably do programming. And again, this is just to get into the sector. Things get a lot more advanced in terms of when it comes to data science. Like, the data aspect of programming requires a lot more, but just to get into programming as a whole, you just need to know A plus B equals C. So how long should you expect the whole process to take? Let's say you're a new person getting into engineering programming. How long should it take? Boot camps are very expensive, because I think the one my friend did was 12,000. And this is insane, by the way. And this was at a respected university. The stuff they teach you are all basic stuff. And again, this tends to be compressed or condensed into the span of maybe 6 weeks, 12 weeks max, something like that. So they can't really teach you in detail all the things that go into all these aspects. You can learn the basics before boot camp. Use Udemy, YouTube. Those two sources are awesome. Ideally, I'd say avoid doing boot camps unless they give you some kind of certificate. Do your best with the free resources you do have. And then once you've maxed out what you can do with those free resources, then ask somebody you know who's in the industry to recommend you a way to get started. So as I've mentioned earlier in this video, the 3 recommendations I have in terms of where you should get started: YouTube, find what you want to look for, and then get exposed to the lingo and how to think about programming in general. 2, Udemy. These contain actual courses on what you want to study. And then the last thing is practice. I'd recommend HackerRank. So they have a lot of problems there, and at different difficulty levels and skills and programming languages. And a lot of the questions there are interview based. So some of those things I asked people on interviews. Okay, I get it. Developing an application might seem like a huge deal right now, or like something that's really challenging. And it is. If you're going into any programming language, developing an app, a full-fledged application, is going to be very difficult. But it is a process you need to go through so that you can learn how things work in its entirety. When it comes to programming, or most things that involve problem solving, don't be intimidated by the level of the problem. Because if you can tackle the problem, because no one expects you to do it perfectly in the first time. When you have a problem, the best process is to divide it into problems you can handle. And in the ones you can't, take your time, go find resources to learn about this aspect or this piece of the problem, and then tackle it bit by bit. The reason I recommend doing personal projects in order to get better at programming is simply because those personal projects, 1, those are real life applications. 2, those are going to stretch you. It will stress you, but those will stretch you a good amount. Meaning you actually can take your time to learn all these aspects of your project, that is. But you can also take your time to get used to the feeling of tackling something that is unknown. Most of programming is research, to be honest. You can use Google, you can use Stack Overflow, you can use ChatGPT. That has become a lot more common now, by the way. You can use all these tools that are available, because no one is going to expect you, when tackling a problem for the first time, to completely know how to solve the problem instantly. As you practice something, you get better at it. So same thing with this. The more you get used to solving problems, the more you get used to solving unknown problems, the more relaxed you'll feel when you're given a project. So hopefully what I've said so far helps you guys. And again, ask your questions in the comments. I will try and answer as much as I can. These set of videos in the beginning for me with this channel are just more to give information. Down the line, I'm going to be doing something completely different with this channel in terms of the content I release. But for now, it's just to help as many people as I can, because I might not be able to make videos like this in the future. When it comes to picking a programming language, it really is based on the market demand. There are some that never go out of style, and of course, you can pick those. But personally, my advice would be to do your research. See which one is in the market at the moment. And an easy way to do that, go to job markets, Indeed, Glassdoor, whatever job thing you have. Check, what are people asking for? What are people hiring for in mass? Right now, I know Python is very popular. Of course, JavaScript, TypeScript, those are always the classics. Java, I know a person who got a job recently with Java. So just use the resources available to you, and that's Indeed, Glassdoor, and see what those people are hiring for. One thing I'd say, especially if you're in college and you've already gone down one path, finish that path. Don't switch midway. I do understand the necessity, because a lot of people will see, okay, with engineering you can make 6 figures almost easily. That is true. But the thing is, software engineering is one of the few things, about programming, I'll say programming programming is one of the few things or skills that you can self-teach yourself. But if you're already down a path and you're like a few years in, finish that. If need be, take a certificate in computer science or something related to programming. All this process, honestly, should only take 6 months. It can take longer, of course, depending on how much time you have to devote to learning a language. For the most part, it's not, as long as you take it at your own pace, you'll be fine. Getting your first job really comes down to how good are you compared to your opponents, the people who are also applying. And this has come from a person. I've interviewed principal engineers, and I've also interviewed junior developers. First of all, one, you need to know what you're talking about. Okay, so you need that confidence to communicate exactly what you want to build, why you're taking an approach, and show that approach clearly. One thing that you shouldn't get into a habit of doing is if you're developing. Sometimes when you develop, you think it's just you who will handle that code. So when it comes to reading that code, another person reading that code, that becomes, it looks like gibberish. No one knows exactly what that person is trying to get across. The code works, and it probably works perfectly. But if somebody else, a second engineer, came to work on that piece of code, they'd have no idea where to start. My first advice is, in coding, have a team-based mindset in writing your code. Use comments, name your variables correctly. All those help in terms of how readable your code is. Second, in terms of getting your first job, have projects you can demonstrate. Say that, hey, I've done this, I built this app that does this, I built this other thing that does this, and the level of complexity of your applications, as long as you can explain what they do and they work correctly, those give their interviewers more of a reason to hire you than anybody else. Communicate in non-technical fashion and in technical fashion what your app does. If you can communicate what your app does properly, you will be ahead of most people when it comes to getting a job, especially if you want to be a junior developer, because usually most people start as junior developers and then they move up. So when it comes to becoming a junior dev, just have a few projects you can show off, saying that this is how I built it, this is the framework I used, this is the language is built in, and this is what it does. Second way you can probably try and get a job is using your resources, using your connections. So on LinkedIn, if you have a friend who's a software engineer, ask them to recommend you. So I mentioned earlier in this video, HackerRank is a very good resource. It gives you different types of problems, and a lot of them are interview problems, because you can ask it to give you interview level problems. And keep practicing that. In most cases, in an interview, if you can answer the problem that's in front of you in a good amount of time, your code is readable, and you can explain exactly what you did. The rest should be easy. The rest comes down to soft skills. How social are you? Are you a good company fit, culture fit, all that stuff. Earlier in the video, I also talked about soft skills. Now, this is where it kind of, between two people who have very good programming skills, the soft skill, whoever has a better soft skill set is going to get that job, hands down. I'm going to wrap this video up because it's kind of gotten a bit too long for me. Again, this is my first set of videos, and I'm just trying to get a hang of YouTube, trying to see how things work. It's not going to be perfect, the color, frames, all that stuff. I am learning. If you have any comments to help me out, and just drop them down below. I'd really appreciate it. So again, I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.